I'm Stephen John Drew from Better Podcasting, a podcast about podcasting, part of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find fantastic geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Are you telling me you built a time machine?
There is no school.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Well, let me finish them, please.
I only have one rule. Everyone fights, no one quits.
Welcome back to the Sci-Fi Sunday podcast. I'm your host, David S. Dawson, and today we are reviewing the final film leading into the Rise of Skywalker. We are reviewing Star Wars: The Last Jedi. To break down this highly divisive film with me, I've got my sister,
Theresa Dawson,
and our good buddy,
Oscar Perez.
All right. Oscar, you haven't been on the podcast since the first episode, right?
Yeah. That was a lot of fun to record.
So this one should be fun. Like I said, The Last Jedi is super divisive, so we'll have plenty to talk about, I think. But before we get into that, I just want to mention we are a member of the Gonna Geek Network at GonnaGeek.com. So if you're enjoying our podcast, make sure you go over there and check out some other incredibly geeky podcasts that should fancy your nerd whims. And if you're also enjoying us, make sure you check out our sister podcast, the Intellectual Podcast, where we talk about creative life with creatives of all different varieties, but mostly filmmakers. And now let's get straight into The Last Jedi. We got a bit of a time crunch, so we got to try and get this one in like an hour and a half, which we've notoriously been very bad at doing. But Teresa's got to leave because she's got to go pick up Mike Peterson, who's flying back from Florida this morning so that he can join us to watch The Rise of Skywalker this evening and podcast with us about the new film tonight. So
exactly. Yeah.
Lots of juggling.
Very important things.
So the opening crawl of The Last Jedi. My only real question when we were watching it last night is this the first time officially in film canon that Luke is referred to as Jedi Master Luke Skywalker?
Can't think of any other times.
I noticed that too, actually. I noticed that, and I think so. I don't... Yeah, because even in Force Awakens, I don't think anybody says that, so...
Yeah. I think right from there, you start to get some of that dangerous territory that this movie delves into. And a lot of it has to do with Luke Skywalker and people's expectations of who Luke is, right? When you use a term like Jedi Master Luke Skywalker, it sets up that kind of expectation that we're going to sit down with
a Yoda.
A Yoda, a Mace Windu, a Obi-Wan Kenobi, whatever. And maybe that's not quite what we get. I don't know. But we'll get into that in a second.
Well, you do know.
Does anybody else recognize the fact that BB-8 in the opening scene with Poe is the character in this movie that says, I have a bad feeling about this?
Yes.
I did not catch that, no.
I totally caught that.
When they're pulling up to the Dreadnought, Oscar, and Poe starts talking to BB-8, he blurts a whole bunch of whistles out, and Poe says, oh, come on, buddy, a little positivity here. And Leia says, I think I have to agree with the droid on this one.
Yeah.
That's BB-8 saying, I have a bad feeling about this.
Yep. I noticed that.
And director Rian Johnson confirmed that too. So
I caught that when we watched the first showing of that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. I liked that the droid had it. I liked that BB-8 got it because he's so spunky.
Well, and it's a nice change up on the trope, right? Say it without actually saying it, but let everybody who knows Star Wars really well figure it out, which I
exactly.
Think Poe Dameron makes a prank call to General Hux to buy time,
which is hilarious.
Okay, I died of laughter again watching it last night. I did. I thought it. I couldn't. It was. Yeah. To me, that's the modern day Han Solo jabbing.
Right. We're all good here.
Yeah.
Coolant leak.
Exactly.
Big coolant leak. Gonna have to lock it down. How are you?
Yeah, exactly. So, if Han Solo was in that situation as Poe, I kind of feel at the time frame this was, I think he would have done sort of the similar thing. So I really liked it. I thought it was hysterical.
I thought it was funny that conference calls don't even work, in the distant past and, faraway galaxies. Isn't that hilarious?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, one of the complaints I've read people have about this particular scene is it kind of diminishes General Hux into a babbling idiot.
He is a babbling idiot.
Well, he's a Nazi, so.
there you go. Okay. I did have the question of what is going on with General Hux here. He looks like a Tim Burton character through a lot of these early scenes. My take on Hux in this film, and it's not a popular take, but it's my take on Hux, is the dude just oversaw the destruction of Starkiller Base. I think he's off his footing.
Yeah.
He's not as confident in himself. I gather from the way Snoke talks about him being a miserable cur, a loser or whatever later in the movie, that he probably got massively reprimanded, maybe even beat, by Snoke. And he's kind of not really himself at this point. So, I get that. I enjoy that aspect of the character throughout the movie is he doesn't seem to be in his right mind.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Really, if you're working for someone like Snoke, I would imagine that would be a tough thing to live down, having Starkiller Base explode under your watch.
Yep. No. Yeah. I kind of like that for once. You kind of see something like that these bad guy generals and stuff like that are still human. So when things don't go right and they get reprimanded by their superiors, they
act like it.
They act like it. To me, it made it more realistic for me. They weren't just always the hard ass, They know that at any second they could just be killed because they didn't do it right.
Right.
So I like him being more kind of nervous that things aren't going correctly.
It shows that he's weak, basically, and I think that's a key character element in someone who works for the New Order and
exactly, and that's the other thing is how could any of these generals and stuff like that, very well knowing, and have probably seen the guys above them be killed through hologram. Exactly. How do you have to be a little weak to be able to follow those kinds of orders, I think.
Yeah.
Continuing the humor in the film, Leia has the great line that I absolutely loved, where she turns to 3PO at one point and says, "Wipe that nervous expression off your face, 3PO."
Oh my God, that was amazing too.
He struggles to do so,
struggles to do so because, of course, that is his face. Yeah. I absolutely love that line, and I'm 100% sure that was Carrie Fisher's contribution to the script.
Oh, completely. It's totally
which,
her
according to
humor.
Ryan Johnson, she had a lot of input in this story, in this script, in the dialogue. He famously used to go sit at her house with her and go through the script as he was writing it, and get her input on stuff. And I think that shows in a lot of dialogue in this movie,
right?
Because there's a lot of snarkiness in this dialogue,
which is all her. She's
which
so
is
snarky.
totally Carrie Fisher.
She's like Queen of Snarky.
And of course, she's nervous because we start moving into this space bombers scene. Which admittedly doesn't make a whole lot of scientific sense because there's no gravity to pull those bombs down in space.
Yeah.
But Star Wars has never really been about the science. I mean, lightsabers don't make a bit of sense at all to begin with.
The Force does.
The Force makes sense. But in the end, I think it's just a really great action set piece that was shot beautifully, choreographed beautifully, and I think comes together very nicely and creates a lot of tension. And sets Poe down a path where he's,
not the best.
Not in the best footing himself either. And I think that's what's interesting about The Last Jedi overall, is like all these characters are really kind of put on their heels, either in their own personal way or in the galactic way. Everybody's a little off kilter in this movie, which I think is a really interesting place to put all the characters in the middle of the franchise.
I think it's actually a brilliant way to do it because you got all these characters and these heroes in Force Awakens, and you're all behind them, and you're super excited and whatnot. But good storytelling, they kind of have to start hurting and struggling for a little bit to then eventually become the big heroes at the end.
And they do struggle in this movie quite a bit.
Yeah,
everyone.
Yeah.
They did some of that in Empire too. So
exactly. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else caught it, but when Leia sits down after the dreadnought is taken down, she sits down in relief and kind of like tilts her head as she's sitting. It's a almost shot for shot replay of the way Akbar sat down when the Death Star was destroyed.
Yes.
In relief.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Just small little tributes to the original films like that kind of exist all throughout the movie if you're paying attention. So I really enjoyed that. Snoke flopping Hux around via hologram is pretty cool.
Fun.
Shows how powerful Snoke is as a Force user. And like I said before, I mean, it makes sense that Snoke's beating the crap out of the kid. He's really unhappy with him for having Starkiller Base get destroyed.
And he wants to do it in front of everyone.
Yeah, he's making an example of him, right?
Hux wanted to take the call in his room because he knew that he'd be reprimanded and beat to hell. But yeah, he did it in front of everyone to send a message because that's what, a deranged leader does.
Yeah. Yeah. Could maybe have done without the kind of girly shriek as he got tossed to the floor. But I mean, what sound would you make if you're suddenly grabbed by the Force and tossed to the floor and thrown across a room?
Exactly.
If you're General Hux, it's probably a girly shriek, ginger and all.
Yeah.
Not that we have anything against gingers.
Not that you have anything against gingers.
Right. Not that I have anything against gingers. Coming out of the whole Dreadnought battle, we finally get back to Ahch-To, to where the Force Awakens ended, with Rey presenting the lightsaber to Luke Skywalker. Now, there's an interesting thing here, time-wise. This part is obviously directly after the last film. But I don't think the Dreadnought scene actually is time-wise the exact same time as Rey handing over the lightsaber to Luke.
Yeah.
Because there is a bit of time that needs to happen with Rey on the planet with Luke that doesn't translate to the same amount of time that happens in the Poe, Finn, Rose Tico storyline as they're on the run. So I think there's a bit of like creative editing here that makes it all feel like it's happening at the same time, but I don't really think it is. I think Rey spent more time on Octu than these guys spent on the run. But I think Rian Johnson also didn't want to start right where everybody expected him to start, which is Rey on Octu with Luke, right? Kind of across the board, he seemed to want to subvert people's expectations. And I think that the choice of how that was edited together, I think, is also reflected in that. But anyway, so Rey hands the lightsaber over to Luke. This is probably the moment where the biggest crack in Star Wars fandom began, is with the decision for Luke Skywalker to toss his lightsaber over his shoulder like he doesn't give a crap.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that completely. I think it's great. He throws away everything. That he's the last of his kind, right? And like he hasn't had anyone around him to be like that guidance in a really long time, and so he's done with it. He's done with, you know, this old religion, you know, laser swords and all that crap.
Did we lose Theresa?
Yeah, for a second I didn't hear anything, and then it came back. I was like, "What the?"
Oh, well, hello, Theresa. Welcome back.
Hi.
How are you?
We're talking about the lightsaber toss.
Oh yes, okay, yeah.
Yay or nay from you, T?
Of what?
Luke Skywalker tossing his lightsaber, the most controversial decision of this movie that just cracked fandom in half.
So I'm not entirely sure why it cracked fandom in half. I don't. So see, this
and
is
I
where
don't.
This.
For the record, I don't believe it cracked fandom in half. I think there's a minority that's very vocal about their dislike of this choice. And when I say minority, I'm not saying it's a small amount of people. When you've got hundreds of millions of people who love something, even 20% of them is a massive number of people. So I'm not disrespecting people who dislike this choice.
Oh yeah, sure.
But I don't agree with disliking this choice. I think it's fantastic.
I think it's okay. So my thing is I actually love how Luke Skywalker is in this film. I did. It made sense to me that through all this and what was going on, whatever happened with him and whatnot, it made sense to me. So him throwing the lightsaber, yeah. I mean, he's a Skywalker. So they're emotional and whiny and you know, all sorts of things.
And now he's a grumpy old man.
And now he's a grumpy old man. But and it's so funny. People are like, he's a master Jedi. He should be. Jedi don't act like this, and Jedi don't act like that. And I'm like, okay.
How does he know what a Jedi acts like?
He didn't really go through training. He didn't.
Exactly.
He started even later than Anakin Skywalker did, like 30 years later than Anakin Skywalker did. You know, like so.
And had at best a couple of weeks with some Jedi Masters for training.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then he's just been followed by ghosts. So, and he's had the books to read, you know, to try to teach himself how to do things. So I don't know why people, it was so interesting to read people go, that's not how a Jedi acts. And I'm like, wow, really? I don't know. I liked Tantrum Skywalker. I think it made him feel real.
Well, and I think it's really set up a lot by The Force Awakens. And a lot of people who complain about this argue that, you know, everybody's looking for Luke. He's going to be the savior. Like, The Force Awakens sets him up as being, you know, the ultimate thing that they're looking to find, except The Force Awakens also establishes that Luke Skywalker vanished after the destruction of the Jedi Academy and after Ben turned into Kylo Ren. Now, as a human being, I immediately understood this guy's in hiding because he feels like crap about what happened and doesn't know how to deal with it emotionally.
Yeah.
And that made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. He feels like a failure. He feels like he failed Leia and, like, I mean, you hear about it later. He feels like he failed Leia and Han. And I mean, like, Luke Skywalker in 4, 5, and 6 did nothing but want to take care of his family and his friends and just do everything possible he thought was good to make things good. Yeah. And when you hear that the temple blew up and something terrible happened, yeah, why wouldn't he retreat and just be ashamed of himself? And yeah, I mean, it totally made sense to me.
Well, and to some degree, that's exactly what the two Jedi that taught him, that's where he found them. When he first encountered both of them, they were in hiding. They were in seclusion.
Yep, because that's what Jedi do. Because
that's what, as far as he knows, that's what Jedi do when they fail, is they run off and go hide. You know?
Those are his examples.
Yeah, those are his examples.
And then as he learned more about the Jedi, and this gets into some of the discussion later on, he came to realize that the reason the Empire even came into being and the reason that his father became Darth Vader is because of the failures of Jedi to not fall into hubris. And he realized that the failure of the Jedi is what led to the rise of the Empire, you know, and it happened right under their nose at the height of their powers.
Exactly.
And once he's got that information in hand, and this essentially in a smaller scale to some degree, the same thing happens under his watch. I mean, of course he's going to question his faith. You know, there are people who don't want Luke Skywalker to question the Force and question his own faith in the Force. But I think faith has to be tested.
Yeah, isn't that like the core?
To truly be faith, you have to be able to question it and then come around to say, you know what, even though bad things might happen or might have happened, I still believe.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that journey takes a little bit of time. But this kind of blind devotion to faith isn't really faith. It's just blind devotion to something. And that when you don't question your faith in something, how strong is your faith? At least that's my take on it. And I think this movie really raises a lot of that kind of question. Like, you know, in the face of great wrongs, do you stay strong in your faith or do you falter? And I think it's more human to falter. And I think it's way more interesting to see, you know, Luke Skywalker at a point in his life, you know, and I'm older now myself, and I've been through plenty of my own battles with my faith. I find it more interesting to see that character going through that struggle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the core thing about faith is you're supposed to question it. You're supposed to really think about it and put a thought process, because the only way to expand and grow in your faith is to understand. And I think full blind faith and not questioning anything doesn't actually doesn't actually feel like you are full faithful. I just feel like you just are a sheep.
Yeah. So, and we can talk a little bit more as we go. But I think we're all in agreement, the three of us on this show, that we like this Luke development. So,
yes.
yeah. Again, not that I am in any way bad mouthing people who don't, because I get it. People have their own desires for this character. And I think that's really what it comes from, is their desires for what they want this character to be, or what they hoped and expected it to be.
Expectation is the root of all suffering.
Yeah, it's really, expectation is tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to movies and characters like this that we have, that have been part of our lives for so long. Yeah.
And I think it gets back to that idea too, and I think it was probably a big part of the storytelling process, is that idea that you should never meet your heroes.
Yep.
There you go.
Because when you meet your heroes, you suddenly realize they're regular people.
Very true.
That has been true for every one of my heroes that I've met. They are not what I built them up to be in my head. They are just regular people who happen to have done something extraordinary that I admired at some point. But in the end, they're just regular people who are struggling like the rest of us. And I love that aspect of this movie. So
yes,
there are porgs everywhere.
Porgs.
It's a porgalicious smorgasbord. So one of the things I paid attention to when we watched The Force Awakens the other day is when Rey's walking up the island, there are birds everywhere flying through almost every shot in every scene.
And they're birds, though. They're actually birds. Yeah.
They're birds, yes. So, but that's why the porgs exist, is because when they went to shoot so much movie there, as opposed to just, a minute or two at the end of The Force Awakens, when they went to actually shoot an entire amount of movie there, the puffins that live on the island there
not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. You couldn't get rid of them. It's a natural preserve. So the solution was to create the porgs to be a something you overlaid on top of the existing wildlife.
Oh, is that what that was?
So porgs are a solution to a problem, as opposed to, because the puffins are obviously puffins, and it really makes the film look like it's rooted on Earth.
Yeah.
So they turn them into porgs to make them look like something Star Wars. They're cuddly, cute-looking creatures, and there's the huge argument from people who dislike this movie that porgs are a toy grab. But from a filmmaking perspective, they're a solution to a kind of unique problem that was introduced by choosing this location as a shooting space.
And it's in like true indie filmmaking fashion to do something like that, which I like, even though Star Wars is now very, very far from indie filmmaking. But like its roots lie in that, which is like, some people still keep their heart.
Yeah. Where's Han? I would have liked to have seen more of Luke Skywalker's reaction to the news about Han Solo. I do think there was a missed opportunity there. Especially given how guilty he feels for what happened with Ben.
Right.
I would think that the loss of Han Solo, especially with Ben being the one who killed him, that would have been a really intense scene to see just how broken and further broken now Luke Skywalker would be from what he's considering the sins of his own in the creation of Kylo Ren. I think there was a missed opportunity there that maybe would have made the whole Luke Skywalker story easier for some people who don't like it to swallow. So I do think that's a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, I could see that. But I agree. Yeah, I think that was missed.
We eventually get to see Snoke in his throne room. Snoke in The Force Awakens was a giant, like, imposing hologram. Nobody really knew how tall he was. Is he like a giant? And then we get to see him here in the throne room, which is cool. It's just red, which is,
cool. It looks cool.
It's pretty minimal. And I like that it has hints of like Empire influence, but it's still kind of really its own thing. It's not a recreation of Palpatine's throne room,
Yeah.
But Snoke in his robe, and I don't know, the way he kind of lords over the room and stuff, I just kept thinking he's like a Miami drug lord in the 80s.
So funny.
Which is a choice, you know.
I mean, it's like the Emperor in the Throne Room. I don't know. I like the design. I thought it was fine. Yeah, people thought Snoke would be so much bigger or whatever. I'm like, that's what a hologram. That's what a holograms. But I get it, you know. But again, people wanted their expectations of something grander.
Exactly.
Well, I think in the end it was very like Wizard of Oz that way, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. He's more.
You see the Wizard of
imposing.
Oz, he's this giant image, and when you finally meet him, he's tiny. Now, for the complaints on that, that's also how we were introduced to the Emperor in the original trilogy.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
because he was a giant, imposing face in a hologram.
Yeah.
And
he's
honestly,
just this old man in a robe.
Where else in the trilogy did you ever see a hologram that was just a person's face like that?
Yeah.
You know, it was designed to make the Emperor look big and imposing when in reality, next to Darth Vader, he wasn't. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got to make himself look scary somehow.
So, I think there's great callbacks to the original trilogy that people missed like that.
Yep.
But I wanted to hear good 80s soundtrack playing in the throne room when we met. So, I mean, he's got the big ring, and I don't know. I appreciate when Hux is leaving. Hux looks happier with himself because he's talked about
now
hey,
Kylo's in trouble.
He's like, hey, I can track these guys through hyperspace. We found the old Empire technology, and it's working. And I've got them. Like, don't worry, I've got this under control.
Yeah.
And I think he found his way back into Snoke's good graces. So he walks out with that smirk that he had in the first movie. And then we watch Snoke tear Kylo apart a bit emotionally, telling him to take off his helmet, and I expect you to be stronger with your Skywalker bloodline, and you're no Darth Vader,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which is just pushing every button Kylo Ren has, right? You're watching Snoke masterfully manipulate the psychology of this kid.
And it shows how weak Kylo Ren is, like him being affected by all of that. And that's like what he, that's where he gathers his powers. He gathers it from that weakness. And that's why Snoke's doing it, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, but isn't that how all the Sith Lords in reality get their guys? I mean, like, they find the weaknesses and they exploit the weakness.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's how else does any evil person convince somebody else to go and do the wrong thing? You got to exploit the weaknesses in humans. Or yeah.
I like how this scene leads into an awkward elevator scene with Kylo Ren. Yeah.
Yeah, he smashes the hell out of his helmet in the elevator, and the door opens. Everybody's like, "Oh God!"
Yep. Straight to work.
He's like, "Prepare my ship." They're like, "We're in communication, sir, but we'll figure it out." Where's the janitors? We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I love the reactions of stormtroopers and all these other secondary characters to Kylo Ren's tantrums.
Yeah.
It's some of the best stuff.
I appreciate that in the sequel trilogy, the stormtroopers and the generals and all the staff of the First Order are far more likely to show reaction to the tantrums of Kylo Ren than you ever really saw out of the Empire staff with Darth Vader.
Yes.
And
Now,
it's
is
like
that you think because in the Empire staff, especially with the stormtroopers, they were clones, right? So
no, the Empire's stormtroopers were regular people.
Okay.
The clones had been eliminated by that point.
Got it. Okay.
The only clones that were remaining at that point in time were on the run, like Rex.
Got it.
Who had become disenfranchised with what had happened with them with Order 66 and had managed to get the chip taken out of their head. And were free clones.
Got it.
And you get a lot of that story in Star Wars Rebels, which is excellent. If you haven't watched that series, go watch it because it's fantastic. Some of the best Star Wars storytelling ever is in Star Wars Rebels. Yeah. So, but I think the reality of it is if there's anybody who's going to react to Kylo Ren or in the original trilogy, Darth Vader, with any sort of foreknowledge, it would be the people who work with him all the time. Right? Like they're the ones who expect it. I have a dislike of one scene in Empire where Vader kind of berates Lando, and you see Lando like hold his neck like he's scared he's going to get force choked.
Yeah.
Is that something that people outside of the Empire are even really aware of with Vader?
Well, I feel like
it doesn't seem
doing business with Vader. Like he would know his tactics. At least he'd know like the shit he does.
I don't know. I would say, yeah. I think word travels. It's possible.
Okay. Luke.
I don't know.
Luke and Rey start having their conversations, and in Luke's frustration with Rey, he asks her, what do you expect me to do? Stand down the First Order alone with my laser sword? Which is essentially, Luke tells us, the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I think is kind of awesome. Because, Luke, that's exactly what everybody wants you to do.
Yeah. We need you to be that legend. They need you to be the legend.
And,
yeah,
and
I didn't
even there, it's that. Night. Yeah. Even there, it's the play of like Rian Johnson. I enjoy the writing in this movie overall because of things like this. Like, even within the context of the characters in the movie, he's saying, here's expectations and here's the cold reality. Is like, nobody is a hero like that by nature, like we rise up at moments to become things like that, but we're just people.
Yeah. And you're not like it all the time. And you can't, there should be nobody expected to just be that all the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love the music in this film. The whole sequence where they're showing Luke going through his day. It just really dawned on me how much I like the music in this movie. It's not as bombastic as like the Imperial March.
It feels like fun, upbeat, like.
But it's just it's a very beautiful soundtrack that sets a lot of moods. But the moods aren't bombastic the way they were in the original trilogy. And I think that's true for a lot of the music overall in the sequel trilogy. I'm really curious to see what the music's like tonight in The Rise of Skywalker. Especially since it'll be John Williams' final score in Star Wars. This is also when we get introduced to green milk. Does a body good, baby.
Oh boy. Yeah, that scene
That scene pisses off a lot of people too.
It didn't piss me off. It was just like really wow. It took me out for a second when I was watching in theaters, and then again watching last night was I don't know. It's a cool scene. It's Yeah. It's got to come from somewhere, right? Like, you know.
Right. Well, in the end, Luke was a farmer, right?
Yeah.
So we're kind of just seeing him like he's returned to his roots. It's not moisture farming, but it's still farming, right? Like,
but I mean, seriously, it's milk. Where do you think milk comes from?
Where would it come from?
I think a lot of people don't want to ask that question.
Yeah, this is the first time you had to think about it. Like, yeah, I like it.
I also enjoy that Luke is basically completely uninterested in Rey until the Force tree calls to her.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden he's like, "Whoa, what's going on here? Who is this girl?" And the whole back and forth with them inside the tree, where he just keeps asking her, "Who are you? Who are you? Why you?" And I like where she's like, "I'm from nowhere," and he's like, "Nobody's from nowhere."
Because he's from nowhere.
She goes, "I'm from Jakku." The boy from Tatooine tells the girl from Jakku, "Okay, that's pretty much nowhere." I think that's hilarious. Because, you know, their backgrounds are very similar in the end. And this is also where we get Luke saying, you know, the Jedi have to end. And the thing that strikes me in that scene is the way it's framed, the way Mark Hamill plays it with the heavy burden on his shoulders and the kind of tired knees. He's carrying so much guilt and regret on his shoulders, and you can tell that it's really clouding his judgment on everything.
Yeah, and it's a silhouette. So, I mean, like, yeah, I think I said this right away. I thought Mark Hamill in this movie was amazing. I really did. I really thought he portrayed so many different kinds of emotions in this movie. But I agree with you, Dave. He showed a lot with just that little bit of stuff there.
Well, and quite frankly, I think this is some of the best acting Mark Hamill's ever done on screen.
Oh, completely. Absolutely.
And it's really saying something for Mark Hamill too, because like a lot of people, when he read this script, it wasn't what he had envisioned for Luke Skywalker himself. And it took him time to figure out how to get into that place and into this character where he's at. And I think the real testament to Mark Hamill is that, unlike a lot of fans who are just bitchy and moany about it, he did his job and he found this place with Luke Skywalker, and he's incredibly convincing in it.
Yeah.
You know, and watching the performance again last night, I watched it with this idea, okay, I want to see if Mark Hamill cracks in here. If there's any spot in it where I feel like he's not truly feeling where this character's at and he's not selling it as a director, I was really interested to see if I could see, you know, this perceived massive amount of disappointment that Mark Hamill has, which, you know, people have done micro reaction clips out of YouTube, you know, from interviews and stuff he did leading up to the release to say, look, he's really unhappy about it here, you know. But I think the reality is he sold it, you know, and he, as an actor, he jumped in and really connected with the moments and made this character in this position come alive. And I admire the hell out of Mark Hamill for the work that he did in this movie.
I completely agree. Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah.
So, Leia throughout this movie is trying to teach Poe to be a true strategic leader, not just a cocky flyboy.
She likes her cocky flyboys.
Yeah. But, you know, and maybe this is a little bit of a response to her history with Han. She wants to kind of break Poe Dameron of that habit a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you read the novels and stuff, Han Solo never got rid of being a cocky flyboy. That's why he kept running off all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, and they were never divorced. And they weren't technically separated either. He just kept leaving on adventures with Chewie because he didn't like to just sit at home waiting for her to come back from the Senate or whatever. And those trips got longer and longer, and his returns further and further between. And then what happened with Ben, he carries guilt too for not being around and for, whatever part he felt like he played in the fall of his son.
Yeah.
And those trips just got longer and longer and longer there too, until you get to the point where he hasn't seen Leia in several years, and he's convinced himself that she doesn't want to see him. But even in the novels, you read how she wishes he was around more, but she totally understands that's his nature. You know?
Exactly.
And so I think
she's a smart woman. She was a smart woman, and
yeah, she knew who she married.
Exactly who Han was. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think with Poe, I think she's trying to, because Poe's still young, And I think with Poe, she's trying to teach him to balance his life out a little better. So it's an interesting take on Leia as much as anything. Not so much on Poe, but yeah. So tracking through hyperspace is one of those interesting things that was dropped as a little bit of a nothing line in Rogue One.
Yeah.
When they're on Scarif looking for the plans to the Death Star, one of the things they come across is lightspeed tracking.
Yep.
And it's just like they kind of blow right through it. They breeze right through it.
It was a total throwaway line.
Throwaway line, but here it is in The Last Jedi carrying weight, because on the heels of seeing that in Rogue One, here it is. First Order has mastered that technology.
Yeah.
So I like that little tie-in, and a lot of people don't catch that either.
Yeah. I love all the tie-ins that this movie does with previous films.
Yeah.
It's a lot. There's a lot.
Well, and by doing that too, it also kind of ties in the Rogue One movie into the main films, even with even more connectivity than the fact that Rogue One is a prequel to A New Hope. It's neat to see the writers tying everything together like that in subtle ways. Let's skip ahead a little bit. So Leia and Poe, mother and son, obviously still have some connection. As Leia senses that Poe's about to, or not Poe, Leia and Kylo still have some connection. Because as Kylo's about to attack her ship, it looks like she reaches out to him and he hesitates. So I think there's still an emotional, spiritual force connection between the two of them. It's not super strong, but it's strong enough that we see that Kylo does still have some feelings for his mother.
Yeah.
He still knows what needs to be done, but he can't be the one to do it, which is interesting, and it shows some
it shows a crack in his dark side armor,
Exactly. Yeah.
Again, I don't want to see Kylo Ren redeemed necessarily unless he's sacrificing himself for the greater good. I don't see any other way for him to be redeemed. But it does show the opportunity that possibility might exist. And it does establish a conflict within him that still exists that we kind of saw in The Force Awakens, but he kind of trashed by killing Han. But we do at least see here that conflict still exists, and it does stop him from killing Leia himself.
Yeah.
So I like that. Of course, it doesn't stop his wingmen from pulling the trigger. And we have the violent ejection into space of Leia and all the bridge staff, including Admiral Akbar.
It's a trap.
It's kind of an unceremonious death for Akbar, and I know that also pissed off a lot of OG fans.
But
I won't say that it pisses me off. I won't say that it pisses me off. I do see it like you just said, Theresa. It's war, and sometimes people just die in war, and it doesn't matter how high up in the ranks you are. Sometimes death just takes you.
Yeah, you don't always get to be the captain sacrifice, being the last one in his ship, making sure everybody gets out. You don't always get to be that. You don't always get to be those things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now the argument is made that we end up spending all this time with Admiral Holdo, who does get that last man on the ship moment. I think you could have written this in a way where that part went to Akbar. And I really would have liked to have seen that because, I mean, Admiral Akbar is a huge part of Star Wars canon. It would have been nice to give that to that character. Instead of introducing a character out of the blue who has no history with this, Right. So her sacrifice doesn't really carry much weight. That sacrifice that she makes would have been way better received, I think, if it came from an OG character sacrificing themselves in a big way. Again, that's just a storytelling nitpick. I think Holdo's actions later are fucking awesome. But I think a lot of her actions and a lot of the things that went on between her and Poe Dameron would have been more easily swallowed by people had it come from Akbar.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Leia's force flight through space. I love it. I think it's a sign of a force user, even a mild force user, kind of instinctually using the force to keep themselves alive through something as abrupt as that decompression. It does have a sense of Mary Poppins to it. I think mostly just because of the way it looks for somebody to kind of
sideways
float. I mean, like, how do you not look like Mary Poppins? They even reference it in Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Like, I don't know. I liked it. What did you guys think?
I liked it. Like, it's been time, and like you look at it after a while. But like when I saw it in theaters, it was just like mostly difficult to watch. I remember slightly unrelated, but being at Disneyland in the Star Wars shop and being just like my eye caught by these portraits that they have of Carrie Fisher in the Leia costume, and I was just staring at it for like minutes on end, and like, man, it's hard, it's tough, like I can't believe she's gone.
Yeah, I think that was I think some of the hardest part of that whole part was, because we had just lost Carrie Fisher.
Exactly.
So it was kind of
like days before the release of the movie, right?
Days before the release of the movie is when we lost Carrie Fisher. And so looking back and watching it again last night, I liked it. When I first watched it, it was just hard because she was gone. So it was just like, it was one of those pulling at the heartstrings a little bit. And in real life, just kind of going, oh, could she not be gone? Can she do that? Can she just come back? So, but watching it last night, it made, people are like, what? I'm like, okay, she's a twin. So why wouldn't they hinted at her sort of having a connection with the Force already in 4, 5, 6, So I don't know why people were surprised that she could do that, and in my opinion, she is a smart woman. And why wouldn't she find some way in these years to learn some of the Force herself and to probably teach herself and Luke probably teach her some things. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was hard to watch that first go.
Yeah. Now within the new novels, it is stated that in the years right after the Battle of Endor and before she became a mother, so like in the immediate year after, a couple years after, even shortly after Kylo was born, Leia did do a certain amount of training with Luke. And Luke did try to teach her how to use a lightsaber. He did teach her how to float things, how to use the Force. She never felt comfortable doing it. She never imagined that she could become a Jedi the way Luke was turning into a Jedi. Because in the end, Leia felt like her greatest strength was being connected to people and leading and being a senator. She felt like she could do more good in the universe as a senator. Now, when that fell apart, she turned into a general and created the Resistance and led the Resistance as the First Order came into being. But she does have some limited training as a Jedi. Technically speaking, probably more than Luke got before Luke started running around acting like he was a Jedi in Return of the Jedi, you know? So I don't find, you know, there's story that's not told in these movies, right? Especially when you got a 30-year gap or 20-year gap between films. Obviously stuff happened.
Yeah.
So, you know, why is it a stretch to feel like, okay, Leia would have some innate Force abilities, and in a life and death situation like that, they'd kind of jump to the forefront to help her save her life.
Definitely. It's instinct and yeah.
Now
she's always been a survivalist. She's always been the person that saved herself.
Yep. Yeah. Now, I also paid really close attention last night, and just before the decompression happens, and again, this doesn't work scientifically speaking, but from a watching something visually in a film, it works. Just before the bridge blows out with decompression, she takes a larger breath in. Leia, being Force sensitive, would have sensed that was about to happen.
Yeah.
Especially since she'd been tapped into her son.
Yeah,
so when he watched those missiles coming in towards the bridge, flying past him, she knew it was coming.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't think there's anything about this that doesn't work. I think it works. I think it might be a little kind of romantically played out in the way it was shot. But I liked it. I liked it as a story beat, and I thought it really kind of built up the power of the Force and what Force users can do. And yeah, you know, I mean, there it is. So
yeah.
We go from that scene to Chewie roasting a porg.
Porg roast.
And all the porg like crying that he's about to eat one of their kind, and he doesn't look like he can do it anymore. My question, I have asked it since this movie came out, was like, is Chewie going vegan now? It doesn't require a response, Oscar.
No, he's not. No. I don't think so. No.
I think it was more entertaining listening to Oscar's response to that. It's like, do I answer this?
We have a great moment now with Luke on the Millennium Falcon.
He finds Han's dice.
He finds Han's dice, which again ties this movie into Solo, and ties it into the original A New Hope, because that's where those dice are originally seen. So, you know, if you pay attention when you watch A New Hope, there are those dice hanging on the in that space on the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. They don't make a big deal of them, But I mean, Han Solo's the kind of guy who has quote unquote fuzzy dice hanging off his rearview mirror. So
Exactly.
I really enjoy the sequence here between R2 and him. R2's not used much in the sequel trilogy, and I know that bums a lot of people out. It bums me out because I do love R2, even though I think BB-8 is a really evolution of that same type of character. R2's been with us for 40 something years. So it is kind of sad that he doesn't get as much time on screen, but
I mean, that droid has been through a lot, though.
he's been through a lot. He's really old, right?
He's really old and beat up. At some point, even the droids can't keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and honestly, we don't see astromech droids like this in much of the sequel trilogy at all.
No, they're all rolling and stuff. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they've kind of evolved to a different style of droid, astromech droid. So,
which makes sense.
I mean, R2's become obsolete in some ways, probably.
Yeah.
But I love that R2 gives him shit. So much so that Luke has to tell him, "Hey, watch your language. This is Sacred Island."
Yeah.
And the fact that he plays Leia's hologram to kind of say, "Hey, get your head out of your ass."
Yeah.
I think is a fantastic character beat.
Yeah, and I love Luke's response, going like, "That's below the belt, dude." Like, that's like, come on. So
but
good.
it's also a really great reminder, I think, to the audience that, hey, Luke got on this journey because his own master was in hiding and had to get called out on it. It's time to come back to the fight,
Yeah.
Now, Obi-Wan was always waiting for that call. So when it came, he answered, right? That's the reality of Obi-Wan. He's always waiting for that call. Right. Luke's in a different headspace in that
he's not prepared.
He didn't expect to ever be called back. So it's a bit longer process for him to come around, I think. And R2 gives him a nice little nudge here, like, "Hey, you're being a dick."
Yeah.
My notes on the introduction to Admiral Holdo. Okay, good speech. What the hell is she wearing?
I don't even remember what
she's got that like silky gray like dress thing.
Yeah.
And the purple hair. Which I like. I like the purple hair. But, as an admiral leading the charge of a group of like warships, I don't know, the kind of light cocktail dress just seems out of place.
Fair enough.
Now, she makes the decision not to tell Poe Dameron what it is they're up to. And I know there's people who like hate this aspect of the storytelling that Poe's kept in the dark. And it could have been easier to just tell Poe what was going on. But the reality is he's not in good standing. He's being reprimanded and he's being taught the consequences of disobeying orders and to mind his place. Well, so I don't have any problem with that, right? Like,
well, I don't either. And out of respect to General Leia and her decision.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the last thing that Leia did, and that's what Holdo reminds Poe of.
It's like coming into office and undoing everything the previous did.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in that way, I don't mind that character beat at all. I think it would have been easier to take it from her had she not been in a dinner dress. If she'd been dressed like an actual admiral, like military garb, I think people maybe could have taken that better. But she comes across as just like this like regular person, like barking orders at a military guy, a guy we've come to know and respect as, a military guy. Like, shouldn't this like civilian lady tell this guy what's going on? But she's not a civilian; she's an admiral. But she's not dressed like an admiral, and I think that's a weird costume choice that kind of makes the messaging here harder to understand.
Mm.
We also get introduced to Rose Tico. Representation matters is what I wrote. I love seeing an Asian in Star Wars.
Asians need loves too. Everybody's all happy with Latinos and all this other stuff. Excuse me, us Asians need love too.
Yeah, and mind you, she's not the only Asian in Star Wars now, because we also have the guys in Rogue One.
Yeah.
But it was great to see one in the Skywalker saga.
Yes.
And I liked her. She figures out Finn real fast.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're the guy who jumps ship all the time.
Mm-hmm.
She goes straight from fan gushing to like, wait a minute.
Tasing him. Yeah.
Yeah, but then she's also smart enough to listen to what he had to say about tracking through light speed, and she's smart enough to know that it's possible, and they figure out an idea on how to maybe fix that.
Yeah.
And of course they go to Poe, which is probably a mistake because he's not exactly thinking straight himself at this point.
But they don't know that.
But they don't know that. And Finn really doesn't know anybody in the Resistance except Poe.
Exactly. Yeah.
So of course he's going to go to Poe, the bromance lives.
I like Poe's coup d'etat that he pulls, like once the plan is enacted, and yeah, interesting little military coup that he pulls. I like the political stuff in Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as far as coups go, it was well played out.
Yeah.
We do get to see Maz Kanata for a little bit here. I loved the Maz Kanata bit.
She's busy.
She's busy because she's got a union dispute, and it's erupted into gunfire.
Yeah.
Which is great. And then we have our first Force time call. FaceTime, Force time.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we caught it.
And I dig that through the whole Force time call, and it's the first couple of times that it happens. Like Rey's just pissed, she wants to shoot him, she wants to scream at him, and Kylo, after an initial I'm going to try and use the Force to get you to do my will, once he realizes he can't do that through the Force time call, he stops worrying. Yeah, he stops worrying about how angry she is, and he's just kind of like, what's this?
Going on? Yeah.
Why is the Force connecting us like this? What is going on? Can you see my surroundings? I think that's fantastic. I like that he's inquisitive. I think it makes Kylo Ren way more interesting. And in some ways kind of pulls him out of being just a complete fucking lunatic.
Yeah.
It actually kind of showed a lot of intelligence.
Yeah.
Which I liked. Yeah.
Yeah. Rey goes to the Jedi Temple with Luke. There's artwork on the floor of a meditating creature that's in both light and dark. And I think that also plays into Luke's discussion with Rey about the balance, that the Force is both light and it's dark. I think this whole explanation of the Force from Luke during these sequences is the best explanation of the Force within the movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when he's got her meditating and you see the birds, and then it goes underground to the decay, and then the flowers blooming, and how everything feeds each other, and the Force is the thing that connects it all. It's a lot of beautiful imagery that matches in with a beautiful bit of dialogue from Luke.
Yeah, the balance.
Yeah, and that idea of balance. The prequels were all about the chosen one bringing balance to the Force, right?
Which he did.
Yeah.
which we've argued in the podcast number of different ways on what that exactly fucking means. Because what I've always come back to is balance exists regardless. There's dark and there's light, and everything feeds each other in the Force. There is no imbalance. The Force is the Force. And I think what Luke really presents here is like, he says, Jedi don't own the light side, and Sith don't own the dark side, right? These things exist.
After the Jedi is gone.
Yeah, it'll be here after the Jedi are gone. The dark side will be here after the Sith are gone. We have this conceit that we control it, and we don't. And I think it's a very cool explanation of the Force that's coming from a guy who, technically speaking, has walked away from his beliefs.
Yeah.
But in the description of the Force here, you see that he doesn't disbelieve in the Force. He disbelieves in the dogma of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And in the same way, probably also disbelieves in the dogma of the Sith. And I think he feels in his core that the removal of these two entities from the universe will in some ways put the Force back in balance, because you don't have anybody overly distorting one side or the other to their own personal use.
Yeah. Because in reality, both abuse the power to their own beliefs.
Yeah. And I think Luke's trying to teach Rey that hubris and conceit are the downfall of the Jedi. Right?
Which they have been.
So again, I think this whole sequence is very much in line with the prequel storyline, and it is great to hear Luke reference what happened in the prequels. A Jedi Master trained the Jedi that would become Darth Vader, and the Jedi Council in their peak, allowed the rise of the Emperor and the Empire. Like, he ties in the whole prequel trilogy into part of why he's like, look, the Jedi aren't something to be revered.
They're totally flawed.
They're as flawed as everybody else, Yep. So I love it. I really appreciate the writing on this, and if you're a person who doesn't like this film, I would hope that you go back and try and watch it again, and just try to appreciate it for what it is, because there's a lot here to enjoy, and it is in many, many ways, I think, the deepest of the Star Wars movies.
Completely.
Force time redial. Kylo keeps analyzing the why and how. How does he get wet? There's a lot about Force time that leaves a lot of questions. Rose and Finn, and we're hauling ass because I know Teresa's got to get going in like 20 minutes. Rose and Finn end up on Canto Bites. Arms
dealers.
Rose talks about the worst people in the galaxy, and then the next shot is like rich people drinking champagne on balconies. Yeah. She's talking about the wealthy in Canto Bite. Her hatred isn't misplaced, though we later learn that it's also only half the story. Again, there's a lot of depth to the things that are told in this film. And a lot of people think that Canto Bite is a side story that has no purpose and no direction to it, and ultimately is a big failure. But I think the reality is it's a character beat. It's also world building.
Yeah.
Because it really grows the Star Wars stuff beyond just the military and beyond the farm boys, and goes, hey, look, there's also the rich elite who are feeding off of all this. Which I think is a great piece.
And it's true. Yeah. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Benicio del Toro's stutter's a weird acting choice. I'm just going to leave that there.
Very, very strange. I put tartamudo because that's what it is in Spanish. That's how you say that. Strange.
Yeah. So
he always makes interesting choices.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Benicio del Toro. I know that's an unpopular opinion.
But
I do enjoy him in this movie. Partially because it's a weird acting choice, and I think that's great for Star Wars. But yeah, anyway, I want a resistance ring. Where can I get one of those?
That's badass. Yeah, that was really cool.
Like every time I watch this movie, I'm reminded that I want a resistance ring. I got to go on Etsy or something and find where someone's selling one.
Yeah.
Because somebody's made it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how it's a universal symbol. Like they mentioned that earlier on in the movie. It's a universal symbol. Everyone knows our symbol. Everyone knows what we fight for. And yeah, I enjoy that. They illustrate it too.
I forgot I had a freaking job interview call at 9 this morning. I'll call them back when we're done.
Whoops.
This, I also wrote here in my notes, this sequence says a lot about classes and the financial side of warfare. And in a lot of ways, I think it's a better piece of political messaging in Star Wars than anything we got about political stuff in the prequels.
Definitely. I think it's like much more relevant, at least in like the real world. But yeah.
We get back to Octu. Luke reconnects to the Force, and he's instantly connected to Leia in the way that Luke and Leia have always been able to kind of sense one another, right?
Yep.
At the same moment that that's happening, we get Force Time Topless Edition. So
Ben Swallow.
Ben Swallow. Kylo and Rey, they have that same kind of connection, but somehow it's way more disturbing.
It's just, I thought it was hysterical. The whole, can you put a towel?
Can you put something on? Yeah.
Can you put something on? Do you have a towel or something? It's like, oh my God, it's hysterical. And he's still just like, what is going on? Like,
yeah. Why is the Force still connecting us? And this is where he starts saying to her, hey, has he told you the truth? And again, this is where we get into the points of view discussions.
Exactly.
Luke is essentially doing the same thing with Rey. And after this Force Time call, Rey takes a walk on the dark side. This whole sequence, I don't know what to make of it, because she's in a dark side cave. Like, how much of it, like, what is the cave trying to tell her? Is she a clone? Why does she only see herself? And is it really just a reflection of her own loneliness? Because Rey has felt alone most of her life.
Well, I feel like it'll play on your weakness, right? The dark side. So of course it would be like loneliness. It'd be all her weaknesses, and like that's why it brings that out, and it brings that to the forefront because there's a lot of pain there.
Yeah. And that's what the Force likes, the dark side of the Force likes to do, right? Is prey on your weaknesses.
Yeah, on your pain.
After that, we are given a glimpse of Force Time. Reach out and touch someone. And we get the kind of sequence of Luke. Luke didn't handle the whole Kylo Ren thing well. And, I think all of that makes a lot of sense, Yeah. He had a moment of weakness that completely changed the course of his life. And sometimes that's what happens.
Yeah.
Is it something that bothers people? Yes, I can understand how it bothers people. I totally understand how this particular character beat, more than any other character beat in the movie. The idea that Luke Skywalker would even ignite his lightsaber over his nephew is a tough pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm. And he says it, in a moment of weakness and just for a second, and then he knew his, his mistake as soon as he did it. It's interesting, like, the repercussions will follow.
Yeah. And I think, if you're honest about things, we all have those moments of weakness that are just a fleeting, flashing moment where you think you'll do something and then you stop yourself, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And yes, this is a horrible idea that he might kill Ben Solo,
Yeah.
But if you get into, again, some of the expanded canon, the comic books have shown that the Emperor spent years instilling doubt and fears into Luke Skywalker subliminally when he was asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So how much of that has carried over through time,
Interesting.
And now that we know the Emperor's coming back in Rise of Skywalker, thanks to the trailers, maybe he's still doing it. I don't know. Ray asked him, "Did you create Kylo Ren?"
Which is funny.
Right on the heels of him talking about another Jedi Master creating Darth Vader, right?
Yeah.
So it ties right in. Like, he has become the mirror of the thing that he says he hates. And I think it also shows how easy it is to lose somebody by making mistakes,
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Ray takes off, and Luke goes to the tree to burn down the tree, and we get Yoda.
We get some Yoda again.
That was fun to see in theaters. That was like, whoa! I was not expecting that at all. And like, I'm glad
amazing.
he was.
I love that. That was a surprise. I love that was a surprise.
Yeah,
and he was a puppet, and he was a good puppet.
It's a really good puppet too. Yeah.
It was like OG style puppet. Like, it was,
it was
nice.
old and
And he was funny, and it was amazing, and it was.
And he has Luke all figured out. He's like very smart, and
he's still been watching, and
exactly.
Still looking to the horizon.
I love that line. I love that line.
It's fantastic.
It's great,
and it's a reminder that Luke Skywalker was not a good student.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He was impulsive. He ran off early. He has that Skywalker blood in him, right? Like, he's not the greatest. So it's not a huge surprise to me that he kind of fell from the path he was on.
Yeah.
But then I love, and again, I think if you're a person who doesn't like this movie, if you can go into it and appreciate it for what it is, this sequence with Yoda is some of the best writing in Star Wars.
Yeah.
The greatest teacher failure is we are what they grow beyond, right? Like, this whole sequence is so beautifully done and such a love letter to Yoda. And if this is the last time we see Yoda in the Star Wars universe, I am okay with it, because it's so tonally true to the character.
It's true to Yoda,
and beautiful. And him speaking to Luke like this is like, hey man, like, you've goofed up, but that's okay. And like, we're supposed to learn from our failures. He's always one step ahead, right?
Yeah. Like, that contained nothing that the girl didn't already have herself. And that's definitely true.
So, okay. I like the Del Toro discussion of the realities of good and bad. That the wealthy sell to both sides.
Exactly.
The only way to win is to don't join. There's a lot of really interesting bits there. There's a Hardware Wars tribute in this movie with the iron. If you've never seen Hardware Wars, look it up on YouTube. It's a classic fan film from, I think, all the way back in the 70s, maybe the 80s. It's fantastic. And again, I'm like hauling ass and skipping through stuff. So Let's move all the way forward to Rey. Rey and Kylo are in the throne room.
Oh, that's fun.
Yes.
That's a fun sequence.
One of the things I wrote is love the thing that the dark side users can't really see or understand? Question mark. Because the Emperor doesn't see Darth Vader throwing him over the railing.
Yeah.
Because of his love for Luke. And Snoke doesn't really see the truth of what he's seeing with Kylo here.
Yeah, when he does.
Because Kylo's in love with Rey.
Yes. Because they don't understand those feelings. They don't understand what that is. They don't know how to see that.
Yeah. Kylo and Rey fighting back to back, I think, is incredibly cool. I also think it's incredibly cool the way Kylo kills Snoke. I think
that's badass. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was so cool.
Yeah.
That was amazing. But I love this lightsaber sequence.
I think it's cool. It's really well shot.
Yeah.
It's I think the first time we see slow motion stuff in a lightsaber duel in Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, there's some creative choices that are being made that are kind of changing the filmmaking style of Star Wars, which I'm okay with.
I like that slow motion shot too, because it goes from slow motion to like a regular motion in the same shot.
Yeah, it's a speed ramp.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Kylo says to Rey, your parents were filthy junk traders, sold you for drinking money.
Yep.
Yeah. My question here is Kylo being honest, or is he an abusive boyfriend putting his love interest down and in her place?
Well, yeah, like I have no reason to believe that Kylo's being honest, but like I also feel like the narrative that he puts out like fits in the story. You're nothing to this story is what he tells her, and like that's what Luke. I don't know. I feel like that's like very Star Wars. Like you're nothing to this story. You have no part in it, but here you are in this grand adventure.
Well, and it's playing into her weakness, right? Because her weakness is that
she's nothing.
Is that she's nothing, right? She feels like she's nothing, and that's what she was shown in the dark side cave, and that's what he feeds her here. You are nothing except to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like I think you're something. I'm the person you should be with. It's a very abusive relationship that's like starting here.
Right.
Which always puts me a little unsettled with the Reylo people.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of the two of them getting together for, happily ever after, because I don't think that would work out.
That's weird.
So, but there's people out there, hashtag Reylo, look it up. Like there's people who really want to see these two together in the end.
Yeah.
I hope that's not exactly how it goes down. I mean, I'm okay with the idea that they have an affection for one another because they are unique in the universe, right? So I think they would have an affection for one another. Yeah, we'll see where that goes tonight. Holdo's Last Stand, badass.
It's cool. Yeah.
I think the visual on that is freaking stunning.
Yeah, definitely. And then the sound design, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the whole sequence was just put together incredibly well. I think the build up to the tension there between Kylo and Rey, like force pulling the lightsaber between each other, the ships being blown up, trying to get to Crate, and this decision of Holdo to like sacrifice everything in one last ditch effort to save her friends. I think the build of tension there is just a really, really well done piece.
Yeah.
Again, I think Holdo's Last Stand would have been better as Akbar's Last Stand. But it's also something to say that Akbar died at Leia's side. Because especially in the novelizations and stuff, that's where Akbar always was. He was always Leia's right-hand man, and the guy to back her play on stuff all the time. So
Right.
You can see it as being a appropriate way either direction. But I would have liked to have seen Akbar make this last move. Phasma comes back. She's battling Finn and Rose. The only question I have in this sequence is Phasma's outfit made of Beskar?
Interesting.
Because she takes blaster hits like the Mandalorian does.
Yeah.
And I think it makes the same ping noise that we're hearing in the Mandalorian too. So a little deep dive. I'm going to have to look that up and see if maybe that's
yeah, seriously.
Especially with the fact that within canon in the Mandalorian, the Empire had mined all the Beskar and kept it for itself. So it's entirely possible.
It would make sense. Yeah.
I think Hux looking over a dead Snoke is cool.
And then
sing Snoke in pieces,
Yeah.
Great.
And then Kylo's deflection, he's like, yeah, Rey did that.
Yeah. Yeah, the girl killed Snoke.
Yeah.
Pretty funny. But I also like that for a moment Hux thought I could kill Kylo right now, but Kylo woke up.
Yeah.
Right.
We get down to Crate. Finn and Rose crash land, and we have the reunion of Poe with BB-8. And what does Poe do? He rubs BB-8's belly like a dog. I'm just saying that's the nature of this relationship.
Yeah, he's like, where's my droid?
Red dust on the salt flats is really pretty. I love when the Falcon comes in and takes 3 ties out in one shot. And Rey's having a good time shooting the cannons, which I think is fun. Let's see. I'm really hauling ass now because Teresa's got to go in like 4 minutes. Poe's learned not to do a suicide run for nothing. And people complain about Rose Tico stopping Finn from committing a suicide act.
Yeah.
But like we got to remember, Rose just a few hours earlier lost her sister in the last suicide run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to lose anybody, and I think that's important.
I think it's important to like that whole sequence of them escaping is only a couple hours, and so like everything that happens in the movie, besides like Rey, like you said, Rey's initial sequence takes place within the span of a couple hours, and like that just adds to like the urgency of everything. And like, this is all very recent. Everything that you're feeling is very recent. There's a lot of hurt right now,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Your family just died.
Leia says the galaxy's lost all its hope. Cue Luke Skywalker.
Yep.
The New Hope returns for one last bit of hope. And what does he do? He does exactly what he said to Rey earlier in the film. He confronts the First Order alone with his laser sword in what is, I think, one of the coolest sequences in any Star Wars movie ever. I love this whole bit. Yeah. With all the AT-ATs shooting at him and then him just dusting it off. And then the confrontation with Kylo Ren, I think, is played so beautifully well. He doesn't attack Kylo Ren. He just keeps him engaged so his friends can get away. He exerts a tremendous amount of force energy to pull this off. I love the subtle hints that he's not there because his feet don't drag the salt at all.
Right.
If you're really paying attention, it's obvious he's not there, right?
Exactly.
He's clean. He's more clean cut Luke Skywalker. He's not the shaggy hermit.
He's what you all sorts of Skywalker to age into.
Right. He's the hero, Luke Skywalker.
Exactly.
That's the image he projects out to the universe to see. Mm-hmm. And can you imagine being one of the First Order troopers on the AT-AT watching this go down?
Yeah, exactly.
Be terrified.
Tell me that doesn't kind of shake you to the core, right? And then for him to just vanish, just be like, see you later, kid. Whew, disappears. Everyone's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I love that because it's larger than life. And in the end, that's what Luke gives the universe, is something larger than life. A greater vision of force use than we've ever seen before, and a completely passive version of it. He's completely on the defense. He doesn't go into attack.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And when we come back to Luke on Ahch-To, if you look at him closely, he's in the same meditative seating pose as the tile artwork that's in the temple. And he's floating off the top of the rock, right?
And this is where the tears start to flow. This is where, like, this can't be happening. Oh, this is such a difficult thing to watch on screen. Yeah.
As soon as you see the two suns, you know he's going to disappear, right?
Oh,
And,
yeah.
like-
God, that was so hard.
And like tears, real tears from this point on until the walk to the car. Tears, like in the theater, man. It was hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, an interesting thing happens after Luke is gone and after he's faded away. We have Leia and Rey who both sense his passing, which I think is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But then we're given Force Time Goodbye Edition. Who's connecting them at this point?
Well,
Because Snoke said he was the one connecting them, and he's no longer there.
sounds like Snoke's a liar. One, I mean, but like that's not surprising. But if we think about what we know now with those fucking trailers, pardon my language, I don't know if that's kind of podcast.
It's fine.
So like you said, Palpatine's going to be in this one tonight. Like, what is there? Is there something there? Is that like the greater evil that is like connecting them? And did Snoke like feel that, or I don't know? There's something there that might come into play tonight, I think.
Yeah. So Rey took the sacred texts, which gets back to a line Yoda had, where nothing in the library that the girl Rey doesn't already have.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that.
Which I think is beautiful.
Yeah.
Leia's going to teach Rey, and I really think that's where originally this film was going to go. Tonight. It'll be interesting to see what they're able to salvage of that story, since they only had about 6 minutes of Carrie Fisher footage to work from. And then I love the ending of this movie, where the legend of Skywalker's actions are spreading through the galaxy.
Yep.
And we get introduced to Broom Jedi.
I think that's interesting. Like that whole ending sequence. So it could be used to like show the passage of time, which someone brought up to me. I thought that's pretty interesting. Like maybe this is going to show like a time jump in the next movie, but who knows? I don't know. Strange.
Yeah, because you got to figure that kid didn't hear that story immediately. Like it had to have been a matter of weeks or months later. So
yeah.
But it's because word of mouth stories like that across a galaxy are going to take time to get around.
Completely.
But I think it's awesome. I think that's a great way to do it. And the fact that this kid is a stable hand and he's force sensitive. What Rian Johnson does here is basically get rid of the midi-chlorians idea and go back to the idea that anybody could be force sensitive. And anybody could become a Jedi if their heart's in the right place.
Right.
Yeah.
And the fact that Luke says at the end, "I'm not the last Jedi." He's come full circle too, right? And I don't know. I just love it. I love this movie. It does have flaws. Don't get me wrong.
Definitely. Yeah.
I agree with people that there's flaws in it, but every Star Wars movie has flaws.
Every Star Wars movie has flaws. I loved it. I really
I think there's way fewer flaws in this than there are in the prequel films. But
that's true. Yeah.
But I enjoy the hell out of this movie. I think it's way deeper storytelling than we've ever really gotten before. And I think for me, it's infinitely more interesting each time I watch it. Because I am able to kind of let go more and more of the things that I don't like about it.
Yeah.
And just really kind of settle into the storytelling that they were trying to give and understanding the storytelling of it and how really kind of deep and meaningful the storyline is in this film, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I agree. I think they gave us a lot. They gave us a lot in this storytelling. A lot of emotional and more deeper meaning to this whole Skywalker saga and Force and the good and the bad and all this sort of stuff. And I really, if you take a lot of other stuff aside and just really focus in on it, it
gives us a lot about the world. Yeah.
It's a fantastic film, and we are, Theresa, you and I are 8 hours away from watching The Rise of Skywalker. We will be podcasting about it tonight. I
got my special shoes ready. I'm wearing my Star Wars shoes, and I made a new jacket, like a patch jacket. So I'm very excited. I'm ready to go.
I will wear my Finn Poe jacket again tonight. And
fabulous.
And we're going to have a good time. And I look forward to podcasting with you about that tonight, T.
Yes.
Oscar, thanks for joining us today.
Definitely.
Oscar.
Yeah.
I look forward to chatting with you at some point, Oscar, about your thoughts about the film as well.
Yes, I can't wait.
So for now, this is the conclusion of our run-up to the Rise of Skywalker, which we will conclude tonight with our post-Skywalker review. We actually did it, T.
We did it.
We stayed on top of it. I mean, it's been you and me consistently.
It was you, me, and Mike. It. I missed one. Mike's missed one, but we did it. We did it.
Yay!
Yes.
So, okay, all right, everybody. Until next time, may the Force be with you. Thank you for joining us on Sci-Fi Sunday, and we will talk to you all again very soon.